All right. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Let me know if everyone can hear us all right. We do have microphones here, but if we have to adjust them, we can. First order of business, I just want to make a motion to approve our minutes from our last meeting on November 1st.
I just had one correction, and it might have been, I may have misspoken. The minutes said seedlings from the Arbor Day Foundation were free. They're not free, but they're inexpensive.
Okay.
And I may have misspoken, I don't know.
So we can make that correction. Does anyone object?
No.
All right, well, with that correction, I'd like to make a motion that we certify the minutes from our last meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, so we have a couple guests this evening. And to kick it off, we'll start with Julia Koop. That we asked to come and answer some questions and talk to us about the Tree City USA designation. So first, I'd like to give you the opportunity to kind of introduce yourself and tell us what you do and talk about your experience with Tree City.
Sure, thank you. So my name is Julie Koop.
Julie.
And I work for the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, the Urban and Community Forestry program. So again, thank you for inviting me to participate in this and your meeting tonight, because I do like to talk about our program and do like to help communities with their urban forest. So what, have you had any interaction in the past with Molly Freilisher, who was my colleague out in the western part? Okay.
I did. I got it going in Great Barrington. And
Oh,
Molly,
sure.
And Molly was very helpful. And you helped too with some questions, but it was mostly Molly.
Yeah, so Molly, my office is based in Boston and Molly's was based in Amherst. So that's how she would take the western and I take the eastern part of the state. Molly has since left for Colorado, and we've backfilled her position with Matthew Cahill, who would typically be attending this meeting, but he does have a young child at home, a very active young child at home, so he was not able to do so. So we work with communities and we provide technical assistance, grants. We've awarded the town of Great Barrington grants in the past. Grants are 50-50 matching grants. Are you familiar with our grant program?
I am.
Okay.
I am.
So,
And if I remember correctly, volunteer hours count towards the 50-50. Is that right? We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Oh, you seem to be muted.
It's a long answer too.
We can't hear you, Julie.
Can people hear us?
Eric, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
Julie, can you hear us?
Yeah, Julie, you're muted.
It seems like it might be on your end, your microphone.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I don't know why. So the funds can be used for, they range, fund grant amounts range in from $1,000 to $40,000. They can be used to complete tree inventories, management plans, tree plantings, strategic tree plantings, heritage tree care, and then there's a sort of an all other category, which could be something such as developing an adopt a tree sort of program, could be development of a tree nursery. We do not fund ongoing projects such as tree pruning, tree watering, any sort of tree care, unless of course it's a heritage tree, which is a tree that's documented historically and also is 35 inches greater in DBH.
And my
So we
question
award these
was,
grants annually,
sorry.
and a way in which we like to encourage and reinforce the Tree City USA program is if a community is a Tree City USA, we do award them some extra points when they are applying for the grants. It usually doesn't make or break the grant application, but it is just one sort of carrot for communities to become Tree City USA.
I have a question.
And
What is the annual appropriation for your
I'm
grants?
not hearing folks, but you're hearing me.
We hear you. And do you have your speakers? Oh, we'll give a second.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear us now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Eric, can you try that again?
Sure. What's the annual appropriation for your grant program?
The annual is maybe about $180,000. So these are funds that I received from the U.S. Forest Service. So those funds vary from year to year. This past year, there was a bump in funding. Each state gets a $200,000 base funding, but those funds are also used to support an assistant, and that would be Matt and formerly Molly. So I do use the funds for other things, not just for grants, for staff and other programs.
So the Massachusetts legislature doesn't appropriate any funds for you?
Not currently. Yes, they support my position, but they do not support, there's other programs that do support, state programs that do support tree planting and other initiatives. And there's a little bit more coming down the road here with the ARPA funds.
And Molly, in terms of the 50/50 for the grants, am I remembering correctly that volunteer hours count towards that it's not all cash?
Exactly. It could be volunteer, it could be in kind. Let's say if it's a tree planting program and your DPW has mulch or soil that you can use, you can, and you're not paying for it, you can say that you've received 5 yards of mulch, and the going rate for 5 yards of mulch is such and such, and that can be used for match. So it's in-kind services. If you have DPW helping you do a project, you can use their time. So we try to make it easy for communities to provide match. We do want communities to have some skin in the game, but typically I don't know if it was a struggle for Great Barrington to come up with match, but
No, it was not.
yeah, good.
We had a lot of volunteer hours.
Sure. Yes. Yep. I remember that. And if the project is in an environmental justice neighborhood, the match is 25% rather than the 50% match.
What's the definition of that neighborhood?
You will we have an environmental justice map on our website, and a number of different factors go into the environmental justice neighborhood. Income, education, language. Yeah, so it's a designation by the state, not by me.
Are there downsides to Tree City? Are there reasons not to do it?
I find, so it's an annual application. You have to apply for it every year.
Right.
And I think sometimes there's confusion that communities will apply for it and they think one and done, that they're a Tree City USA. So it's an annual process that has to be filed.
My recollection was the initial application was very tedious. And then after that, subsequent ones, we were just filling in the blanks. It did not seem as arduous for the subsequent. Is that still the same?
Yeah, and I don't know how long ago you were doing it, completing the application. So there's an online portal now.
Yeah, there had been.
So, yeah, so I think I agree with you. I think the first time is always maybe a little overwhelming and not sure what to do. And, just when you know what you have to collect and the information to track, I think it becomes a little bit easier for you to sort of think about that as the year goes on. This past year, we had a record number of Tree City USAs, and I think that was probably the case because the Arbor Day Foundation did not require a Arbor Day event or a proclamation. This year, they are not requiring an Arbor Day event, but they are requiring that a proclamation be read. I suspect next year, they probably will require both an event and a proclamation. And that event can be, pretty much anything at a school, a library, just some public, could be the tree committee.
The requirements include a tree care ordinance and a minimum community forestry annual budget of $2 per capita.
Which I'm sure.
How do we show that we have such a budget? What kinds of committees, activities, or whatever count toward that budget?
Typically,
We have a tree warden that's got a 6-figure budget. Does that count?
oh, absolutely.
Okay, then that's not an issue.
Yes. Yeah, you use your tree ward and your DPW budget.
And chapter 87 counts as an ordinance, correct?
Correct. What we like to see is the enforcement of chapter 87. If there is a tree that is being removed, that there is a notification in the
Right.
local newspaper or that it's posted, just evidence that you are enforcing chapter 87.
Right, and the town does that.
We do that.
Yeah, the
Yes,
town does
so
that.
that's easy.
Yeah,
We have hearings, tree hearings, if you gotta take down a tree.
Yeah.
That is an emergency or dead.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have the tree board, and then the Arbor Day observance and proclamation.
Okay, I'll ask the opposite question. What's the upside other than a sign saying we're a tree city?
Well, I mentioned that if you do apply for a grant, you do get some extra points for that. I think it's a sign. I think it's a commitment to trees in your community. I think it shows your community that you do care about trees. It's a commitment to your trees, not only for yourself, for your DPW, but your residents. Sort of bragging rights. And other than that, I don't think I have anything more to add to that. I could, and I should have done this, reached out to some of our communities, some of your local communities. I'm thinking Sheffield with Tom Ingersoll is always applying for Tree City USA. And, one kind of wonders, he doesn't apply for grants. I'm not really sure why I mean, I love it that he does, but what is the reason for him to do that? I think some communities like Wellesley is our longest running community. Tree City USA has been going on for 46 years now, 46 plus years. Wellesley, I think, is up to maybe 37 years. I think they don't want to be, the tree warden doesn't want to be that tree warden. That doesn't apply for Tree City USA. I think it's pressure.
And I found in Great Barrington, the publications from the Arbor Day Foundation were really very informative. I learned a lot. And it just was better education for the community when we did hold an event. I think people learned something and their appreciation grew for the trees in the town.
We also hold an event, the Urban and Community Forestry. We hold an event, a recognition and award ceremony. We try to move it around the state so that maybe one year, if you're not able to travel the distance, you could the next year. But it's an award ceremony and there's educational components to it. And hopefully we include some education that is helpful to the tree boards and the tree committees and to the tree wardens, so that by attending the recognition award, you are learning something, taking home some information to the community.
And is Matt Cahill an urban forester? You're gone again.
Yeah, I don't know why my computer does that. I'm sorry, is Matt Cahill?
Is he an urban forester?
He's an urban forester, yes. Matt Cahill has been working with the DCR Urban and Community Forestry for a number of years. He's been working on the Greening the Gateway Cities tree planting program. So I'm trying to think of communities out in Westfield and Chicopee and Holyoke, out in your neck of the woods. So yes, he's an urban forester.
I know when Molly was doing it, she came to Great Barrington often, I can't say often, but several times, and just helped us with different things.
Yeah, we were happy to do the same. It's hard, and I'm assuming it was in the evening hours. I mean, by all means, reach out to us and see if there's something we can help you with, even to attend a tree planting event, just to have presence, just to bring some outreach material. Are you familiar with our fact sheets in our website?
I am.
I think I shared with, at least we've been looking at for some time now, the Tree City USA. And I believe I've shared with everyone the DCR fact sheet on tree cities. Is there anything else we should be looking at?
Well, if you, as a group, if you want to look at something new that's been posted on our website, one of Molly's last things that she did was our tree bylaws and ordinances. If you're interested in developing anything new.
Guide to local bylaws?
There you go. Yes.
Oh yeah, we got that.
Yeah, I didn't know
Okay.
she did that.
Well, I guess that's my one question. So if we were to apply for Tree City, we wouldn't necessarily need to come up with anything new in terms of ordinance. We could just do what we're doing. It sounds like.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. All you're doing, yes. For Massachusetts, it's fairly easy for communities to do that because of Chapter 87. Not all states have a Chapter 87.
And so in your estimation, how long does it take to do the first application?
Oh, boy. I guess it depends on how organized you are and how easy it is for you to get that information from your tree warden and your DPW.
The deadline
Yeah, because I think our deadline
would be
next
next
December.
year. So
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
we wouldn't do it for this year.
Right, so I'm not thinking this year, but it doesn't seem like if everyone's on board, it's not a year-long process, correct?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely. I haven't, I've not done it, but
Mhm.
I think, it's a lot of, you're gonna complete your board members, your tree warden, you need to get your, town manager, your board of selectmen had to sign the application. So it's just kind of running down and tracking down people for information. Maybe one of the hardest parts about the application.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay,
The first one I did with the tree committee chairperson. So for two people, I'd say we put 10 to 12 hours each in it for the first one. After that,
yeah,
it would take, the ones I did myself would take, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours. They weren't,
Yeah.
it wasn't
right,
awful. But the first one, and it was our first time doing it, so.
gotcha.
I'm sort of curious why this kind of, is this something you've been talking about wanting to do, or is this?
Well, I was just gonna say, this is our first year being put together. So we've,
Oh, congratulations.
so this is one of the first things that was put out there as a potential path of something we could do in the community.
We've obviously had a tree warden for a good long
We've
time.
had a tree warden for a very long time, so.
But this commission that you're speaking to was set up in a bylaw some time ago, but was never actually made active until recently.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, congratulations. And are you all appointed or?
Yes, yes. So, I mean, on that note, my personal feeling, I really hear not many downsides, and compared to what we're doing with some of our other projects. And we have a year, which feels nice to have a year instead of 2 weeks
Sure.
to get this done. Does anyone have any other questions? Hearing none. I think I would like to put forward a motion that we look to apply in the next round of the Tree City next December. Do I hear a second?
A second.
We're going to have a discussion after the second?
We can have a discussion.
Okay. I don't see many upsides. I don't like to waste town resources if there's not really a great benefit associated with it.
What are the town resources that would be wasted?
Well, they mentioned DPW time, mentioned Mike's time, gathering information and updating information. We don't have that information. We would need to get it from the people in charge of those different programs.
Well, my recollection, the information that we need, and again, I'm thinking of Great Barrington, it wasn't hard to get. And I would imagine, I don't know if Mike does an end of the year report for the town, but in Great Barrington, it included things like how many trees cut down, how many trees planted. Those are the kind of questions they ask. I mean, I don't think it was a great burden for the tree warden to answer those questions.
Well, Eric, I'm thinking that along with planning to do the application, let's at the same time look at the potential benefits and see which ones we would want to go after. What grants would we want to apply for?
Well, as Julie said, yeah, you get a couple points, but that doesn't mean you can't apply for the grant anyway.
True. So it would be in our benefit, but not necessarily a deal breaker. But I think as far as the amount of time it would take for people, one thing I'm wondering, Julie, we have a town annual report that's put together generally in March to be released in May. And I believe the tree warden gives a report in that, all town, departments give reports. So how current does the information need to be in a December application? I mean, can we show basically a year's worth of reporting where that year happened to be from the previous March, instead of December? Anything?
So I'm sort of thinking that information, I wonder when it really is compiled by the DPW. Same thing with my community. The town report is distributed at like the first town meeting in March, April. So, and it's always for the previous, our deadline is December 31st. That's not a hard deadline. We frequently, and I probably shouldn't, we frequently receive applications well after that. So if that information, when it's available by the DPW or tree warden, I think that's fine. I'm trying to think off the top of my head when Arbor Day Foundation closes that portal. And I think it's usually in March or April, or maybe even May. I don't know that for sure.
And it's fiscal year, isn't it? Not
Yes,
calendar year?
yeah.
So if we applied for fiscal year 23, it would be the information for fiscal year 22. So we would have that in the report, if I'm
So I
remembering
appreciate
correctly.
what Erica is saying about, putting a burden on people who already are busy.
Yeah,
But if there's anything we can think of that would make it not a burden, it would help.
Well, I think that's, that's what, one of my big questions was of how long it takes to put this together is for this committee to make sure we're taking on a good portion of the burden if we really want to do this.
I'm happy to do it.
And the only reason I feel actually comfortable is because you do have some experience putting it together already.
Yeah.
And making sure that we're not putting more work on the people who are already doing a lot of work, just compiling it, putting it together, having them look at it, say, okay,
Yeah.
that it's all accurate, and then helping get it submitted. If it's only gonna be 10 hours of work, I think we've been able to do that in the past.
And I think a lot of the I don't have it in front of me, but my recollection is a lot of that information is in the report, is in the town report. In
To make
terms
an
of,
intelligent decision if you haven't seen the application. I mean, and got some input from the people that are going to have to provide the numbers you want.
Well, I think that's why, I want to make sure that, doing this, making this motion, it's that we're going to start the process. We do have a year. We're not going to do this overnight. We're not going to do it for this December. It's going to be next December. So we do have.
What was the exact motion?
The motion is to start the process for the next round, not this coming round, next round of applications.
I would ask that you amend that to, let's gather the information from the people that are going to have to provide the information and see exactly what that's going to entail before you decide to go this route. Because frankly, I don't see a great benefit. Don't see a downside, don't see an upside. But let's take a look and make sure we're not going to stretch resources any more than we have to.
I think that's more than fair.
That's-
Given that, would you like to make that motion?
I make a motion that we get a copy of the application and provide that to DPW, Mark Faber, the tree warden, and ask how much time it will take to provide that information on an annual basis.
Yep, okay, I'm okay with that.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Well, I want to first thanks Julie for coming out. Thank you for coming, answering all our tough questions.
Sure, yeah, I'm just looking at the application and a lot of it is just, there's a short bit on budgets. But a lot of it is just filling in names and addresses. But anyways, I wish you luck on that. Happy to come back at any time if you want me to come back with more information on our grant program. Our deadline is November 1st for the full proposals. Excuse me. And there's a October 1st deadline for letters of intent. So keep that in mind if you would like me to come back and talk a little bit more about our grant program.
Could you give us those dates again? I want to get them in the minutes.
Sure. October 1st is the deadline for our intent to apply letter. And November 1st is the deadline for the full proposals.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Have a good
nice to
night.
meet you. Okay, bye.
Nice to meet you.
Right.
And those 2 dates were for application for grants.
Yes. Yeah. All right. It's good to have some guests. I'm glad we have
Yeah.
people coming. All right. I believe our other guest is on. There she is. Hello. Joy. Hello. So for our second discussion, we'll be talking about farmers markets, and this is really starting the discussion. So tonight we have Jordan Archie here from Berkshire Grown to really talk us through and answer a few questions about farmers markets in the Berkshires and what they are seeing. So Jordan, if you want to introduce yourself and talk about what you do and what Berkshire Grown does.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Jordan. I work for Berkshire Grown. This is my first season in this position. I previously worked at the co-op. I was the produce manager for 4 years. So I work a lot with local farms. And so part of my role at Berkshire Grown is to manage the winter farmers markets. And so that has been quite a task, quite an undertaking that I wasn't expecting to be as, labor intensive as it has been. And I've learned a lot. So that's part of my role. On top of that, I also, Berkshire Grown is a resource to all Berkshire farmers markets throughout the whole county. So if a farmers market wants to apply to use or offer SNAP, or if they want to, expand their reach, we help and advise on that. We are a resource to farmers markets. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I forwarded some information to Matt, and I believe he forwarded it along. Matt and I had kind of a lengthy conversation. So I'm here to answer any questions. I also had a conversation with somebody at the parish over the summer. I forget her name, but I think Matt knows who she is, or knows the parish anyway. And so I had a conversation with her over the summer, sort of explaining some of these things to her. So yeah, I'm open for questions if there are any.
Which parish?
I believe it's the one across from Red Lion Inn.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I think so too, yeah.
Yeah. So, the reason to really have this talk now is I've received earfuls of people talking about a Stockbridge farmers market. And I think the question that really is at the heart of it right now is the feasibility and reality of what it takes to have a farmers market and whether it makes sense. Some of the key points that Jordan laid out what we instilled was the labor intensity of organizing a farmer's market. And, looking at the calendar, it seems like there is a farmer's market Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I believe even Monday, in one or another town. So the question kind of falls down to what are we thinking and is what are we hearing? I don't know if anyone had some opening thoughts that they wanted to share. Yeah.
My wife's willing to donate this book, rather thick, on how to do farmer's market.
Oh.
Because she's done them and she's not going to do this one. And she also wrote up a list of the issues she faced. I helped her. She started a farmer's market in Gloucester. But she was on the city council, had a good relationship with the mayor. He closed down the center of the city at 5 o'clock. She also had started a buy local site. So the farmers didn't really want to come that far, but they did for her. It was very successful. Until they moved it out to Stage Fort Park, and it no longer exists. So location is number one. Second, you need to get the farmers. And if you got a farmer's market within 15 minutes, any direction you go, you're going to have a problem attracting farmers.
Yes, I think that's an issue. You got Lee has a very successful one, Lennox. I think it'd be very much as I would love to have one.
Yeah.
I think a very hard undertaking to get enough farmers to do it. They're very well established in, surrounding towns.
Chuck, if I could speak to that point regarding Lennox, I put location in there as such an important thing. I don't know how many people attended the Lennox Farmers Market when it was at St. Anne's. I did not attend. But my understanding was that it was quite bustling when it was at St. Anne's. I don't know why St. Anne's changed their mind on hosting that farmers market. But my understanding was that it was pretty good for the vendors. I believe Cricket Creek went, some larger vegetable vendors went, and then the town, I'm not exactly sure why, it's unclear to me, moved them from St. Anne's to another location. And this year, I don't know if anyone attended, but I did this year, I couldn't find the market. It was across from Betty's in that dirt lot to the left of where Bravo used to be, and I couldn't find the market. I went twice. So if this is something that the commission or if you are thinking about, undertaking, I'd say location is the most important thing, because I think it could possibly be successful if you can line it up when it's not competing with these other markets, and it could serve a different population. But I do think that it needs to be easy to find, and parking is key. So I think part of what unfortunately Lennox's issue was their location. And then they had vendors drop out because it wasn't viable to send vendors.
I'm all in favor of looking into it and seeing what vendors we can get to make it worthwhile. We got a few locations that I won't discuss now, but through the select board that I think are very well situated locations. But I think our first thing would have to be to find out how many farmers will be able to participate in this, because that's the biggest thing.
Well, I think, one thing personally for the farm that I work at, I know we haven't done farmers markets in the past, just because it is a lot of labor to get there at the time, have everything harvested. If you don't sell out everything, how to bring it back home and store it or do something with it. But I think, if we really want to do this, it seems like we have to make it competitive, and if we're somehow, obviously we're starting out, you're not a known market, you got to wait to build that base of consumers, figure out how to make the pricing for, if we're charging for farmers, a fee or anything, how to make that competitive in the first years when you're saying, hey, this is a brand new market. We haven't really developed that base yet. So making sure that there is a way to compete and draw them. And unfortunately, I'd say draw from other farmers markets and say, hey, we want to be competitive and have a good market.
Well, and Jordan, in terms of getting farmers and other vendors who might also do another market, I mean, I think for us, the nearby biggest competition is Great Barrington.
Mm-hmm.
West Stockbridge is pretty small. Lennox is kind of middling.
Lee is very successful
Yeah, Lee
in the
is.
park. They got a beautiful location. You go by there, it's always packed.
Yeah.
So Lee and Great Barrington are probably, in terms of neighbors, I mean, each one of them is basically 7 miles away. And so one thing that's nice about Stockbridge is that we're kind of central to this group of towns. But then again, there are 2 well-established farmers markets in 2 of those towns. Do farmers go to, sell at multiple markets, if there are different days? Can they afford the manpower to do that? Or are we looking at different farmers than the ones who are selling elsewhere?
I think most farmers tend to try to do one. I think if it were financially viable, I mean, obviously the farmers market cannot guarantee customer flow. But I think if it were financially viable and the market was popular enough, they might do more than one. Also, some of these farms hire people just to do their farmers markets. They're not actually farmers. They're just seasonal employees that just do the farmers market. They don't work on the farm and they just attend the market and are very well versed in the farm's practices. So that's, some people have the capacity to do more than one market. But I think people do lean toward doing one. And the other thing about Great Barrington, Chuck, what day is the Lee Farmers Market on? I don't know off the top of my head. Is that a Saturday?
Saturdays.
Okay. So something that I sort of outlined to Matt was that the day really does matter, because if you do it on a Saturday, I think you're going to have a really hard time with competition. But it also, if it's on a weekday, it might prioritize a different population. Personally speaking, from working 2 years at the Great Barrington Farmers Market, it's a lot of weekenders. I don't know about Lee. But it's a lot of people that are up for the weekend. They're there to get, something to cook in their Airbnb. They're there to get something, there are a lot of devoted weekly, year-round residents. But I'd say that, that's a big portion of that business. If the market were to be on another day, like West Stockbridge is, I think it might draw a more local crowd. And another thing I outlined to Matt is that the senior transportation does not run on the weekends. So there's really not a market around that caters as much to that population. So I don't really know how well you've identified what the capacity is, who you're actually looking to serve and what that population looks like and what their interest is. But I outlined to Matt that that's something to consider, because you might just be a smaller market that's maybe catering to less people, but maybe it's 6 vendors, 8 vendors, and they all do really well with the amount of people that come through. I don't know.
Yeah, I really like that point of kind of making it to scale. And whenever I feel like people come up to me and say farmers market, they're expecting a huge scale, tens, I won't say hundreds, tens of vendors, packing a park, and there being an abundance versus, if we are keeping it, depending on who we're servicing. If it is a local crowd, after work crowd, and they're swinging by, picking something up on the way to dinner, and it's a smaller, tight knit, that's also maybe a good potential way to grow it, keeping it small in the beginning so that we can potentially make it bigger.
I think that's how Sheffield is.
Yeah, Sheffield's.
They're 4 to 6.
Yeah, they're 4 to 6
on a Friday.
Yeah.
With a small number of vendors, and I think they're pretty established.
And I know, from experience of at least wholesaling, generally the biggest sales are coming in Thursday to Friday, because usually people are picking up stuff for the weekend. So they're, by the time Saturday morning comes rolled around, they might have already bought everything at the grocery store versus by the time they get it, So Thursday and Friday, if you're trying to plan meals for the weekend, are very big too.
And where's the Thursday market now?
West Stockbridge?
West Stockbridge, so that's small too. And is it mostly locals that go there?
I've only attended once and I will say that I recognize most of the people at the market.
It is small.
It's small. Yeah.
And I know, and obviously someone else has reached out to you within the town. But I think this goes back to place. I think there are multiple places that are all different scales of size. Obviously, I don't want to start throwing them all out now. But there's a lot of potential, I would say, at different places. And I know it just really, I guess, depends on what people want to go for in the end, in terms of parking and whatnot, and timing of the day with traffic, with summer events. Definitely another thing to consider.
Well, the other thing is that my mom works at a farmer's market at the Berkshire Mall. And not that many people know about it. It's on the same day as the downtown Pittsfield Farmers Market. It's a little more low key. It does definitely get bumping. It gets busy, but it serves a completely different population than the downtown Pittsfield Farmers Market. I worked at that one for a little bit with her, and I worked at they did a Wednesday one at the Berkshire Mall too. And a lot of something that I found interesting was that there were these senior coupons that are distributed, and not a lot of markets take those. And so it really catered to that population that had the senior coupons that are distributed through the state. So I think that if you can identify an audience that you feel like is not being prioritized in our community, and can have transportation and can have the ability to come to this market, it could be a really great resource. And something that I'm happy to talk through with, if there are next steps, is, accepting SNAP dollars. That's a huge thing as well. And there are market match opportunities. So you can walk into a market with $25 and walk away with $50 worth of produce if you're a SNAP EBT user. So I think those are things to consider as well. Is that population being catered to when it's on the weekends, when it's on Saturday mornings? I don't think so. So that's something to consider as well. Is that a population that you see utilizing this as a place to buy local food?
And what do you see with markets? What are markets doing around handicap access and disability access and support?
I think, the parking again is key. That's the main thing for that. And then sometimes there are like market ambassadors, or, just like there's volunteers at a lot of markets that will help. The market manager sometimes, has to, if it's like an accessibility issues of getting groceries to the car or something like that, there's sometimes volunteers to help, which is nice. Do you have any more specific questions about that, Matt?
No, I think that actually is a new thing I've never heard of, ambassadors.
Yeah,
which
so
is a nice idea.
A really great program. I think it's more out in the city area, but they've done market ambassador programs with people that, English is not their first language, and they have a member of that community come through and speak about the different things and the different opportunities at the farmers market. Because honestly, the thing I can say is the most effective is word of mouth. You can advertise all you want, but word of mouth and community trust is the thing that will do the best, it will be the best for your market. Again, yeah, you can just advertise in any way possible, but getting your community on board is the key to a successful market, and getting them invested and having them feel welcomed. Like having a welcoming market is a really important key aspect to a successful market.
Can you just answer one question about how the structure of markets are? Like, who's running it? What are the options? Is there a board? Is it the town? Who's running, and what are the options that you see?
Sure. I can speak knowledgeably about Great Barrington. They have a committee, steering committee, and it's farmers that are at the market, and that's been that way forever. And they essentially manage the market manager. There are markets that I believe West Stockbridge, and you can go, Terry Jo, she owns the liquor store in that town. I believe she's a volunteer, but I don't remember. And they run the market, I believe, on a volunteer basis, but I don't quote me on that. In Lenox, the Chamber of Commerce runs it. Our market is privately run by Berkshire Grown. And we charge, all this information's on our website. We charge $50 for a table at the market, $25 for additional table. And every vendor, which I think this is across the board, has to have a certificate of liability insurance, no matter what they're selling. And they have to have a health permit with the, from the Board of Health. So there's lots of different ways you can structure it, but again, I don't know that I would recommend the volunteer route, because as outlined, there's just a lot to do. And as soon as you start getting volunteers, I feel like it's a lot to ask, and it's a lot of different point people. So that would be like my recommendation, but maybe you could find some really devoted volunteers.
Is the health certificate and the Board of Health certification something that farmers need anyway? Or is that specific to, would they have it anyway?
They would have their certificate of liability insurance. All farmers have to have it to sell to anyone. And in regard to the Board of Health permit, I'm not sure how Stockbridge does it. It might be worth touching base with them. They might not even have an established protocol because they haven't had a farmer's market. But in Great Barrington, it's a $50 fee for the entire season. And depending on what you are selling, there's exemptions. So if you're selling fresh produce, eggs, maple, or honey only, you don't actually have to get a permit. It's a legal exemption under the Massachusetts food plan. But if you're selling frozen meat or prepared foods, there's varying levels of things that you need. So you might need a Board of Health permit. If you're doing prepared foods like, North Plain Farm grilled sausages at the market, they have to have a ServSafe certification submitted to the town. So it's kind of a vendor by vendor basis. And your town might not have a protocol yet because they haven't had a farmer's market, or if they have, it hasn't been in a while.
Thank you.
All right.
It's possible that with the Tri-Town Health Board, that farmers who have gotten permits from League of Lennox may already qualify. Who knows?
Yeah, it would cover all 3 towns.
Yeah, that would make sense to me.
All right. Any other questions as of right now? Chuck, has there been any talk not, that don't want to blow up the scene here, but has there been any other talk in select board or movement on that end?
There was casual talk about having a combination farmers market and crafts thing, but that's really got to be looked at. I'm not sure how the two mesh together.
Right.
So it hasn't been any major discussion, but I think we have to start. I'm all in favor of farmers market, but we've got, there's a lot of homework we've got to do on this to, finding vendors, what day is a good day, good location, and, all the stuff we have to do our homework on to find out what direction we're going in.
Eric?
I'm happy to be a resource if that is something that you all are interested in. A lot of the markets that they go to. So if this is a further conversation, I'm happy to be a part of it and provide any information that might be useful. Just let me know.
Thank you.
Gotcha. Good. Yeah, so it sounds like we have some more talking to do, some more figuring. And Jordan, I hope you'll stay tuned. And obviously, help us guide us a little bit more in the future. So here are no other questions. I'll say thank you, Jordan. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. Feel free to email me if you need anything.
Perfect.
Thanks.
All right.
Have a good night.
Night.
See you.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a lot to think about. I think there was a lot of good points, especially in what she already sent us to kind of review. And Eric, I didn't know your wife did farmers markets, so.
He's done a lot of different things.
Well, that'd be interesting to talk to her at some point too. That'd be nice.
See, the first thing you really have to do is identify a person and how you're going to compensate them, because it is not an easy job running a farmer's market.
Sure.
And
And
if
from-
you don't have that, you can have the farmers, you can have the location, and it's just not going to work. So,
Yeah.
Well, and to that point, from vague rumblings that not to talk too much about pricing, but I've heard, anywhere from 5 to 10 grand for a market manager for, obviously depending on the size. And that's to have a point person, and it's a stipend, I've heard. And also you can divide that between a couple people. So if, to divide the responsibility up.
And it's often one of the farmers?
No, it's own job. Not that I say you can't have a farmer be the manager, but from what it seems like, they definitely pick, like, there's one point person, who's there every weekend, who's also helping with the promotions.
So it would be something that would be needed in the town budget?
Well, if the town is running it, then theoretically, if it is though, set up as some kind of, if the farmers are running it, and you're having a board overseeing a manager, that I don't know how that structure really plays out. And the town's kind of tangential on the side, supporting it with setting up in space. Maybe that's another option. But it seems like most importantly is to have a successful one, like Eric's saying, is you need to have a person. And where that budget comes from, especially the first year. I think it goes back to the point I made earlier that to make it competitive for farmers to decide, we're coming out as a new market. We don't have anything really established. How do we attract them and give incentives the first few years to help build that base? Are we charging a really small amount for a table the first couple of years and heavily subsidizing the cost for the farmers up front? And then with the understanding that it'll increase to a flat rate later on. There's got to be some incentive. Otherwise, if we're charging the exact same as every other market and they're already established, what's the point?
first of all, you start off with 0.
Yeah, I was gonna say 0 would be my
Yeah.
number.
Okay.
I like that
The
number.
second thing is you only ask for a short commitment, like 4 weeks, so they can see if it's actually going to work for them.
I like that.
Eric, I wonder, from Christine's experience, would it make sense for us to try to find somebody who has experience doing this and hire them? I mean, so putting aside the question of how do we hire them, but
Right.
hire them to do basically a feasibility market analysis kind of thing to answer a bunch of the questions that we have. And then they can sort of come back to us and say, here's how I think we ought to run this thing. Does that, because, I mean, we have a bunch of questions we have to answer. And I'm not sure we're really qualified to answer them.
I'm not sure you need a feasibility study. I mean, if you get the farmers and they're happy selling the stuff and you get the location right, what you need is the person that's going to run it, who's going to answer the questions, who's going to work with the farmers. I think that's the most important thing. You put it on you got a good location and you got somebody to run it. The manager is probably the important thing when you start.
So
I
then,
mean, you can pay a lot of money to somebody that, will do a feasibility study, but I'm not sure that what they come back with, well, you've got competition all over, so you got to do X, Y,
You
and
know
Z.
that.
I figure we can figure out the X, Y, and Z, which is 0 fee, get a place where they can back the truck up and put a table. It's located near a population with plenty of park.
I think the other thing to that point to kind of subsidize and give a jump start is, to Jordan's point of really bringing in the community. If there is somehow sponsors or something for that first year to help with the promotion, get a few sponsors from the community to really jump the promotional material / subsidize the budget of the manager for that first couple of years, maybe get a couple of year commitment on sponsorship, say. To Eric's point, I think if we have someone that's their job, you're making a job in the community and they can fill that space and find out what they need to do. And then if we have people supporting it, this board, other board, some kind of other board that is created to oversee it. I think you're right, Eric. I think it just will fall into place if it's meant to be.
Do you think there's enough farmers? Do you think there's 6 or 7 farmers that would want to do it?
My guess is if you make it, give them the incentive, some people will come to us. I think if we are doing it as a craft fair too, that's another whole other thing, because if I am going around to farmers markets and I feel like 75% to 90% of it is now a crafts fair. Unfortunately, which, in a way is good for the crafts community, art community. But it's definitely heavily swayed that way. And also anyone that's coming as a farmer also now has to start doing prepared foods to make money, because they're getting weekenders. So this goes into the whole talk we were kind of just having of, are we really going to focus on the weekend crowd versus the local crowd versus marginalized community? That I think is something that needs to kind of be discussed, because that will also detail our timing of when we put it. Otherwise, we're just going to have a huge crafts fair, people doing prepared food, and there's going to be one person as a vegetable farm in the corner.
My feeling it should be, if we do it, it should be separate.
Yeah.
And, if you do a Thursday, Friday night, I think you're kind of bordering on both the local and the weekender buying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, Saturday, I think it's out of the question because I think it's only established Saturday vendors already. But if you do a Thursday or Friday, I think you're kind of putting your fingers on both ends of the
Exactly.
market.
Late afternoon, yeah.
I really like
4 to 6 or,
Yeah.
somewhere in that range, 4 to 7, something like.
right.
And if we offer things like senior coupons,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of seniors here.
Right.
And if they're not getting that kind of discount service at other local farmers markets, then they'll be oriented toward ours.
Right. Really focusing on that. And I think that's what's going to be honed in, is the focus on that. If that's the community, then what incentives do we give them to get there? And just remember too, with the timing, is farmers got to harvest this stuff too. So I do like the 4 to 6 aspect, because you have someone, getting to work at 7, harvesting, they got to pack up the truck, they got to go bring the truck, they got to unpack the truck, set up their table. So that's all, you have to have the area ready an hour beforehand for people to come, theoretically, just to give them a window. And then you have to have an hour afterwards to pack up. So it's 4 to 6 that it's open, but it's really 3 to 7 that it's probably going to be in motion. But any other thoughts?
I'm just thinking
Yeah.
late Friday afternoon traffic through Stockbridge is. So I would opt for Thursday.
I think Thursday would be the better night anyways.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, me too.
Right, just as of right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Looking at it.
The way it feels right now. So it sounds like it would be nice to, down the road, not next meeting, but down the road, maybe schedule a meeting with the select board, and have a talk about it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I
Chuck?
would have put on the agenda, for more informal discussion.
Yeah.
Nothing to be voted on, nothing to be decided, just to get the
Right.
ball rolling and get people's opinion on it. get the public's opinion.
Right, yeah, and then maybe if we can all plan on attending, whenever that is.
Sure.
It's just to kind of, because I feel like we have a lot of good thoughts around it now. And then
Yeah, I would kind of book it for sometime in January.
Okay,
Check with Teresa, get it on the agenda for January. That way there, we're not starting too late in the
Right.
season. And we just, so just an informal, informational gathering meeting.
and along those lines too, with the select board, us, is there anyone else that anyone thinks should, we have in the discussion, not necessarily next time, but other parts of the community that, because one thing that Jordan threw out that I think it was Lennox, was it? Or Great Barrington, they had their Chamber of Commerce.
Definitely, we're gonna get her involved
Okay,
as we go. Yeah, definitely. I think that would be without having the chambers involved, it'll be a bad decision because, they do the advertising, they know the town and all that.
right,
That would be a great asset to this adventure.
yeah. Cool.
I doubt that they would be able to provide funding if that's what you're
No,
thinking.
but just
No.
But
having them involved, I
Promotion.
think would be
Yeah.
a great
Yeah.
asset to this going forward.
Yeah,
yes,
all right. Hearing no other thoughts about that, let's just move on to the final thing is just, I know at least you wanted to put this on to come up with a date for the Old Growth Forest Network dedication. I don't know if this has been brought up at the select board at all.
So,
Not as of yet, but I think that's something that we should get together as the two committees and discuss.
Gotcha.
yeah, Sarah from the Old Growth Forest Network has emailed me 5 or 6 times asking.
Yeah.
And she's emailed Michael too. And what she says is if the town just wants to do a silent dedication, that's fine. We don't have to do a big thing or even a little thing. We can do a silent thing, just saying the dedication's happening. But I think she does want some sort of
Answer.
answer. And I think too, at this point, to me, the options would be either something in the spring or silence.
I think we should do something in the spring. I don't think it should be silent. It's,
Okay.
a
how
decent
do
thing.
we-
Not to be big, but I think it's a simple little
Yeah.
ceremony down there, in the springtime would be the thing to do. But I think we got together, the two boards, your committee and the select board get together, come up with a
Gotcha.
So
thing of the
maybe,
date.
so at a meeting where we are with the select,
Yeah.
board, we'll pick a
Yeah.
date.
We can even do that, in the same meeting, that January meeting.
Yeah.
We can do
Okay.
that too.
So we'll put that on there and then if it's all right, Lisa, if you can just get back and say that we're going to discuss it
Yep.
at January and for her to just to stay tuned so she doesn't keep bugging you.
Yeah.
I don't mind her bugging me. I'll let her know that. Thank you.
Gotcha. All right. Any other thoughts, business? All right. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to our guests for coming and giving their expert testimonies.
Is the date for the next meeting?
Yes, so the date I want to discuss would technically fall on January 3rd, but that is really close to New Year's.
what are you going to have, a 2-day hangover?
I was planning on it. I was putting it in my schedule. So as long as everyone's okay with that.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. All right, January 3rd. Usual time, usual place. That being said, I will call this meeting to an end. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.